Hey up everyone, I will do an update video on the state of play on the channel in the future soon, but as I said before, this is the second part of the latest chapter in the KTM insolvency story, and I wanted to get it out. Here I talk about the effect on the world of racing. With all the clamour of a clean sweep at Dakar, it's easy to forget the financial woes at KTM, but what does all this mean for KTM racing? Well, KTM Factory Racing is a separate and independent company. Sort of. Although the organisation representing the creditors has stated that KTM will pull out of MotoGP, Moto2 and Moto3 as one of the conditions for approving KTM's insolvency protection plan, people inside KTM and outside are determined to keep KTM's racing operation afloat. Although previously it was reported that the support for the MotoGP team was secure until 2027, motorsport.com now report that KTM maintains its firm commitment to motorsport for 2025 and we will continue to compete in MotoGP. But they didn't mention what will happen beyond the end of the 2025 season. Even the administrators said it's important to remember that the brand slogan is ready to race and that should be used to drive marketing. So it's not just Piera who is being contradictory. And we know they just stole that tagline from Husaberg anyway. But remember, there are still hundreds of workers just within the racing division. Some, like Jeremy McWilliams, have already lost their jobs, and many more will have many questions. It has been suggested the reason Toby Price and Sam Sunderland made the move to cars is that they could see the writing on the wall. Then there are all the specialist suppliers who will be owed money. But before we dive in, as always, I'd like to give a special thank you to the BAREBONESMC family who make this channel possible. You can help us stay truly independent too. You can make a one-off donation or join our group of monthly subscribers on the Ko-fi link in the description. Monthly subscribers get access to a private group where I can share videos that I just can't put on YouTube. People who make a one-off donation will get the same access as everyone else, but it resets after 30 days. So for just £1 minimum donation, you get to see if you think the extra is worth it to you. Then you can choose what you think we're worth as your monthly donation. Anyway, back to the saga at KTM Racing. One announcement from Piera Mobility stated that KTM's motorsport season had got off to a great start, with 3 consecutive victories in the Enduro World Championships, back-to-back wins in the first 2 races of Supercross, and a clean sweep of all major bike categories at the Dakar. They say this is significant because it signals KTM's strong commitment to racing, but I would argue it's far more complex than that. Drafting Edgar Canet into racing Rally 2 at Dakar was obviously a bit of a genius move or a stroke of luck, depending how you see it. But along with Daniel Sanders and Emmanuel Guillen, I hope they all got a decent bonus of some sort. The 3 consecutive wins in the Enduro World Championship is fantastic too, but soured by the news about the sponsorship of the Hard Enduro World Championship, but I will come to that shortly. Aprilia and Yamaha MotoGP bosses have both expressed concerns over KTM's financial struggles, calling it a warning sign for the MotoGP community, and it is, but the high costs associated with MotoGP are nothing new, and only the organisation can change that. Pit Vieira, KTM's MotoGP team boss, recently published a 100-point plan to save the racing division, including reducing the number of factory riders to 40 for the 2025 season. However, as with everything else within KTM, there are some contradictions. One thing seems certain though, the rumours about Lewis Hamilton taking control of the MotoGP team were, it seems, dead in the water. The Hamilton deal was purely for the racing division of KTM, and Stefan Piera made it very clear he would only consider investment that provided enough capital to save the entire company, not just the racing division. He appears to be standing on a pile of rubble which was once his empire, doing his best not to let that empire be dismantled. But maybe that is part of the problem. It reminds me of the saying, Nero watched while Rome burned. The announcement about his new investment does not name any investors other than the Bajaj Auto offer, but as I said in previous videos, there is now an alternative rescue plan that has been presented to the administrators by Whitebox Consortium, and Phantom Vest, who are venture capitalists from Hong Kong, have expressed their interest in investment too. The most likely scenario is still the Bajaj deal. They are already partnered with KTM and produce all the small capacity KTM bikes, and they are already beginning to expand into the European market. Wherever the investment comes from, KTM's racing activities are an important marketing platform. Peter Vogel, who is head of the administrative restructuring process, has stated clearly, and I quote, "The sustainable restructuring of KTM can only succeed if the extensive motorsport activities are continued as a marketing vehicle under the slogan Ready to Race." So, although we know they stole that tagline from Husaberg, it is being recognised as a vital tool for the company's marketing department. And that fits with the off-road bikes. The term win on Sunday, sell on Monday still has some merits in the MX and Enduro worlds, where the various KTM brands offer many options. But how does that really work with the MotoGP team? If either of the MotoGP teams wins, what do the customers go to buy? I guess they are hoping that people flock to buy the Super Dukes and Super Adventure Rs, but are they the bikes that the audience of MotoGP want? Somehow, I don't think so. So does the MotoGP effort help sell the smaller bikes? Undoubtedly, but they are cheaper and have less of a profit margin, and they are built by the Bajaj Group, who keep most of the profits. So KTM bear the brunt of the cost, and any small rewards go to the Bajaj Group more than KTM. I guess the Pierre Bajaj company should really be called the Bajaj Pierre Group now. Or not. We shall see after February the 25th when the final shareholders meeting happens. If you're interested, you can hear more about the business side of everything in the video linked above about the latest developments at PMG headquarters. But anyway, first we get announcements that the MotoGP team is safe until 2027, and that made sense to me, because we know Suzuki had to pay a fortune to buy themselves out of the contract with Dorna. KTM just can't afford that. So to say they were committed until the rule change when their current contract runs out all seemed very obvious. But then we get assurances that the commitment is long term, but with very few details. Then the headlines start coming that the current restructuring plan foresees KTM withdrawing from road racing activities completely at the end of 2025. What is said and what is done are often worlds apart, and this is no exception. On the one hand, all the talk is about KTM racing being a part of and intrinsically important to the KTM brand, but then we get announcements saying, don't worry, it's a separate entity. One thing is for sure, it can't really be both. Regardless of whose rescue plan is put into place, the KTM factory racing teams could continue their activities independently, but it is a big money pit, and with the regulation changes on the horizon, the R&D budget needed to build a competitive bike will be astronomical right now. If Bajaj gain control of Pierre Mobility through the purchase of new shares and bonds, then they would be in a position to either sell off the factory racing teams completely or fund it all themselves. Either solution would comply with the administrator's plans. Then we heard the first of the announcements that you maybe don't think about so much. You see, KTM were not just competitors, but also the main sponsors for the Hard Enduro World Championship. The funding for that sponsorship has now been pulled, leaving the whole championship in limbo. West Promotions GmbH, the promotional company behind the FIM World Enduro Championship, is set to enter liquidation after KTM pulled its financial backing. and Red Bull reduced its support for the Hard Enduro World Championship too. West Promotion created the championship, which was later named the FIM Hard Enduro World Championship, and it hopefully won't disappear, but it will now be under new management and become a different legal entity. West sent out a message to the riders stating, KTM's recent decision to withdraw its support for the Hard Enduro World Championship has had a significant impact on our organisation and the championship as a whole. The current team, under the leadership of Winifred Kershigal and Richard Mitterer, is fully committed to ensuring the continuation of the series and is actively working to organise the promotion of the championship for the next season under a different framework. If changes are necessary, they will primarily affect the overseas races. Not very reassuring, but then maybe I'm just too used to listening to the PMG lies. The bottom line is that West Promotion has covered the operational costs of the HEWC, but it was primarily funded by KTM. So unless they can find a new big sponsor, they will have to reduce costs dramatically. If anything changes, it will probably be the cancellation of events outside Europe, and the Outliers event in Canada is the one being talked about. Keeping the events in Europe would reduce costs for the organisation and the teams and riders. But if that is what's needed to keep the championship alive, better a European championship than no championship at all. Will they find a new sponsor? Who do you think that could be? Despite how it might seem at first, KTM's departure might bring some positives. In an interview with Speed Week, Winifred Kershigal, the manager of the FIM Hard Enduro World Championship Series, said, "Years ago, we proposed a concept for an adventure bike class. At the time, it wasn't approved because KTM felt they didn't have a rider in that category who could win. Beyond that, we can now seriously consider whether to allow electric bikes or even introduce a dedicated four-stroke class. This opens up opportunities to create new platforms where manufacturers, riders, sponsors and customers can showcase themselves within the world of elite motorsport." Now let's look at that statement. KTM would not allow the FIM to introduce an adventure bike class because they didn't think they could win. That sounds remarkably like the kid in the playground shouting, "No, it's my ball and you're not playing." And seriously, I am not sure how many years ago, but with the 950 and 990, then the 1090, 1190 and 1290, shouldn't they have been chomping at the bit? Anyway, separating two strokes and four strokes sounds like a good idea to me to create more racing each weekend, and that would seem obvious. And introducing an adventure bike class would, I think, be fantastic. It would mean defining what that class would look like though. Would it just be an unlimited class? 600cc's and over to include bikes like the KTM 690 and maybe even the AJP PR7? I don't think many big adventure bikes would stand a chance against the big singles in hard enduro purely from a weight factor. Can you imagine taking a 1300 GS around the Erzberg rodeo? As the fallout from KTM's €3 billion debt unfolds, there will be more victims than the Hard Enduro World Championship. The question is, who will it be next? Stefan Piera took a step back from managing the various KTM race teams, leaving Heinz Kinnegardner in the hot seat. Kinnegardner is someone who has had a long-term relationship with Piera, and he's running out of people he can trust around him. Along with Pit Piera, it is Kinnegardner who will be tasked with keeping the ship afloat at the various race teams, but he can only operate within the confines of the administrator's plan. So while KTM won the Dakar Rally for the 23rd time in 26 years in January, everything is far from rosy. The KTM factory and Tech 3 teams from MotoGP will be officially unveiled on January the 30th, and the first two MotoGP tests are just around the corner, so we will see soon. KTM are competing in the Supercross Championships in the USA too. That has already started, so for now the KTM machine is rolling on. The share price of Pia and Mobility reached an all-time low in December, but began to improve after the announcement of the letters of intent, and had risen by around 50% since January the 1st, and that's a big jump. Carmelo Espetler, the CEO at Dorna, has said that he firmly expects the two MotoGP teams from Red Bull KTM to continue to exist, but in what form is still debatable. There are 8 Moto3 teams, with 16 Grand Prix riders, who are due to enter the World Championships with KTM RC4s in 2025, but that is a huge and expensive logistics job. Then there are the Moto2 teams, which may run a KTM banner, but with a Kalex chassis and a Triumph engine. What bikes are they trying to sell? That one in particular makes no sense to me at all. The racing teams do need an R&D budget if they are going to survive too, and the administrator's plan does not allow for that at present. I said a while ago that I thought the present plan in MotoGP would be to run the teams until the end of the contract in 2027, and I still think that that is likely, but beyond that is anyone's guess. Ditching the Moto2 and MotoGP efforts might sound harsh, but until they have a bike they can sell to the people watching, to me it seems like a bad plan. Ditching the hard Enduro World Championships seems crazy to me, when the people watching there could go out and buy their bikes from KTM, Husky and GasGas if they won. Sponsoring the event would put their dirt bikes right at the centre of the dirt bike market, and is much more relevant to the brand than MotoGP is, in my opinion. Racing has and always will be used as a vehicle to sell bikes, but however much you win, if you don't have the bikes people want to buy, you won't have any business. What do you think the future of KTM and its race teams looks like? For now, I'm signing off today. Try and remember to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Sharing the video anywhere you can with people who will be interested would help us too now, as YouTube has demoted everything again. And don't forget, help us to stay truly independent. You can make a one-off donation or join our group of monthly subscribers on the Ko-fi link in the description. Monthly subscribers get access to a private group where I can share videos as the YouTube sees them fit. People who make a one-off donation will get the same access, but it resets after 30 days. Thanks as always to the supporters for your amazing support. Without you, the channel would not exist. And always remember, keep your spanners close and your keys even closer. Ride free, everyone.